Hi, this is Ken Clark, and this is a video for my Introduction to Wildland Fire class at MCLA. This is a placeholder video tutorial on how to use Behave Plus Fire Behavior Prediction Program. Hopefully I'll be purchasing some screen recording software in the near future and be able to make a much better video, but for now we're going to do a very rough and very quick introduction to Behave Plus. So first, what do you need to do the assignments that you're going to get? Make sure that you go ahead and download the Fuel Models Guide. This is, let me get to the front page, the Scott and Bergen Fuel Models Guide from 2005. This is available from the course website. I'm sure you can also find it online to download using Google or whatever very easily. You'll need this to be able to identify fuel models. For your assignment, I'll give you some parameters of fuels and you'll need to find the fuel models. So while we're on this, we'll go ahead and see how that works. Over to the left is the table of contents. As you can see, feel free to peruse the entire document, but what you'll really need for the assignment is down here under fuel models. You'll recall from the slideshow and or lecture part of the class that Scott and Bergen have 7 general categories of fuel models, including non-burnable stuff, which is just for mapping, and then the other 6 are based on the primary carrier of the fire. So grass and shrub together, shrubs, timber and understory, like more shrubs, timber litter, and slash and blow down. So you can go to those categories. I'll probably tell you the primary carrier is one of certain type of vegetation. So let's say we're looking at shrub fuel types, and then it has a description and some pictures of every shrub fuel model. So this is SH1. It tells you a little bit about the fuel bed depth. That's a very important measurement I'll probably give you. Also the fine fuel load, also a very important measurement. And you'll be able to narrow down what the correct fuel type is from that. This is SH1, and it's number 141. SH1 is the input you'll put into Behave. So that's the Scott and Bergen. That's what you'll need and how to use it. So let's move on to Behave Plus. To get Behave Plus, you can go to the frames.gov website. As you can see here, FRAMES stands for Fire Research and Management Exchange System. One of the services they provide is software like Behave and Farsight and some many others. So go to the home page for frames.gov Behave Plus, which you'll see here, or you can just Google Behave Plus and you'll get there quickly. And click on the Software Manuals tab. The home page actually looks like this. Click on the Software Manuals tab. And here you can download Behave Plus. Feel free to use the Behave Plus 6 beta. I haven't used it. What you're seeing today is the 5.0.5 version. Anything from 5 and above should work just fine. Remember, you do have to have a Windows-based computer for that to work on. Alright, so get that downloaded. And it's postcardware, so don't forget to send in a postcard. If you're having trouble finding one from the area, try a local museum gift shop. That seems to be the place to get local postcards. Alright, so when you open up Behave, this is the basic frame that you get. So we'll spend a little time going over navigation, and then we'll do a quick example run and also review some tools. So up here on your menu bar you have a Windows control button, file button for saving and managing multiple runs and worksheets. This is just to run the calculations. Once you've done all your inputs and you want to run the calculations, you click on Calculate. View changes the size of what you're looking at on your screen. Configure is one of our more important ones, and most important thing under Configure is module selection, and I'll be talking about that in some more detail when we go over an example run. Pages, once you do multiple runs, this will help you manage your pages. Windows, if you want them cascaded or tiled when you have multiple windows. And tools, these are very helpful little mini calculators for various aspects of fire behavior. Ones that I find particularly useful are fine dead fuel moisture, relative humidity, and then slope from map measurements. And then there's help as well. That help includes the user's guide. You can also download this from my course website, but you can get it directly from Behave Plus if you're connected to the internet. I know I wouldn't read this, but you can check and look up if you're having any problems that aren't being resolved with this video. Alright, so let's try a run. The first thing we need to do is let's type in a description, just so if we were going to do multiple runs and outputs, that we could keep them straight. And every time I fill in a cell or a field in Behave Plus, I always hit enter. It may not always be necessary, but there's somewhere it is, so I always do it. Otherwise, sometimes it just won't take. And you'll get an erroneous output, or it won't work at all, and you'll get very frustrated and not know what's going on. So we'll just enter the description as tutorial. That's just basically the name of the project or the worksheet. Alright, so this is our input page. There's nothing to input because we haven't told it what modules to run. So we can go to configure and select modules, or we can just use the convenience button here on the button bar, and that will bring us to this dialog box or pop-up window to select the modules. The modules are the different types of calculations that Behave Plus can do. Almost always the one we're going to be interested in, at a minimum, is the surface fire spread. So I'm going to click that. And whenever you have a dialog box open in Behave, it has a description of everything that's there on the right. Now, we want to go to options and just select all kinds of different things to set up your module that you're using. For example, how we enter fuel models, how we enter fuel moisture, wind speed, slopes. You could put it in degrees, although almost nobody does that. But what we're really interested in, and what this default tab is when you open options, is what are the basic outputs. So there's a number of measures of fire intensity, including heat per unit area, fire line intensity, flame length, reaction intensity. So you can get one or more of those. We're going to stick with probably the most common one, which is flame length, which is also a default one. And then surface rate of spread. And then there's others you can do, like how big the fire will get and that kind of stuff. But we'll stick with flame length and surface rate of spread for this. And then we're going to click OK, which are the defaults, by the way. Alright, so that's our module that we're going to do, is the surface fire spread. Just to remind you, we just went to options and we selected flame length and rate of spread as our outputs. Now the input changes, so we have all this stuff to put in here. The first thing we have to select is the fuel model. Now you can go to Scott and Bergen, look up the proper fuel model, and type it directly in there. However, because of the opportunity to make mistakes, I recommend that you use the dialog box. So all I did, so that you can see it, is I just clicked on this arrow, and it gave me all these options. These are the fuel models here. The first 13 are the old fuel models that we really don't use anymore because they're not as specific as the new. There are 40 new ones, so there's that much more specificity. So we're going to go down into the Scott and Bergen models, which have the letters and numbers. The old fuel models are just numbers. All right, and we're looking at under the value column. So let's say we're going to burn, and a common fuel model around here is hardwood litter. Here's moderate load broadleaf litter. TL6, so we'll do that. So you can either double click that, or you can just click OK, and it fills it in for you. And then it automatically blanks out any input fields that don't apply to this fuel model. So this fuel model does not have any live fuel moistures in it. It's all just dead stuff on the forest floor, so those are blanked out. And now here, if you, by the way, remember, if you forget what's going on, you can look over to the right in the dialog box, and it'll give you more information. But let's just say our 1 hour fuel moistures are 10%. I'm entering, you always hit enter. Our 10 hours are 12%, and our 100 hour fuel moistures are 14%. Okay, and then I'm going to go down to mid-flame wind speed. Let's say it's a relatively fast 6 miles, not 67 miles per hour, but 6 miles per hour. The slope is fairly moderate at 10%. So that is all of the, and I always pressed enter even after slope steepness just in case to make sure it takes. It's going to tell you some of the run options that you've picked. It's going to tell you the, or that are defaulted because we didn't pick any. It's also going to tell you the output variables that we did pick. These are the defaults, but we would have picked them anyway. Rate of spread and flame length. And it's ready to go. So you can go to calculate and click that calculate button, or you can just go to the button bar and click calculate, and it gives you the output. Okay, so here's the rate of spread, is 6.1 chains per hour. Here's the flame length, 2.6 feet. All right, and this is actually, see how this says page 2? This is the bottom page of your file. So you can use these navigation arrows to go up and down among the pages. So if I want to go up one page, I'll press the one arrow. If I want to go to the top, which is where my input is, see that says page 1 over here, I just press the double arrows. Alright, that worked out well, but I've changed my mind on the fuel model. Let me just think it's not TL6. It's maybe something similar like TL9, a very high load, a much higher fuel load than I thought before. So I'll double click that, and it didn't work. I'll try it again. TL9, and I'll click OK this time. There it goes. And then I can leave all of the environmental parameters the same and do another run, and you can see that my rate of spread and flame length are much higher because of the higher fuel load. So that's the basic way to do a run in Behave Plus. Before we finish though, there's a few tools that are very useful over here under Tools. For example, if I wanted to calculate fine dead fuel moisture, I can enter all of these in here. Now in this tool, it calculates as you go. So it's got some default values, and it already has the fine dead fuel moisture down here. And then if you want to calculate one for your conditions, then you would go and change these. So let's say it's not quite so hot, not quite so dry, and it gives me a reference fuel moisture. Now you have to pick the season, the time of day, this elevational difference, and you forget this. If you forget this, you can go down and look it up. Elevation difference between projection point and where the fire. Basically, this is the difference between where the fire is in elevation and where the weather variables are being measured. So we're going to say it's pretty much level. They're basically at the same elevation. You're looking at the slope. That's pretty steep for around here. Aspect is west. Let's say it's shaded. And then it basically, all of these give you a correction factor, and it gets added to the reference factor moisture to give you the fine dead fuel moisture. Now if you changed any of these, for example, let's say it was exposed and not shaded. It's not a forest, but it's a savanna or something, a shrubland. Alright, so that fuel moisture went way down to 7 from 10. Alright, so that's a good tool for calculating 1 hour fuel moisture. Other tools, we've got relative humidity. It defaults to the dry bulb, wet bulb tab, but there are also tabs for entering this by dry bulb, and the difference between the wet and dry bulb called the depression, and then by entering the dew point if you know that for some reason. But we almost always know wet bulb and dry bulb because that's what our instrument, the sling psychrometer, gives us. So let's say our dry, and this also calculates on the fly. So if these are your numbers, this is your relative humidity, also gives you dew point. But let's say it's not that hot here. It's 75 degrees. Let's say the wet bulb is 65 and the elevation is 1,000 feet. All right, and that depression is 10. So that's the difference between wet and dry bulb. And then there's the dew point, and it has calculated the relative humidity as 59%. A little more typical for our area. All right, that's a very useful and easy tool. And then one other that's really can be helpful is getting the slope from map measurements. This is slightly tricky because of this first field. It says map rep fraction, map representative fraction, and that's basically the scale that the map is in. And you can select that from this chart. See, most topo maps are 1 to 24,000 Some are metric ones are 1 to 25,000, but we'll say it's 1 to 24,000. Now you either have to, this is 1:x, and the x is down here, so it's 1 to 24,000. So you can either write the 24,000 in here or just double click on it and it fills it in. The units are feet and inches. The contour interval you should be able to get from the bottom of the map. Let's say it's 10 feet. The map distance is the horizontal distance across the map that you're measuring to get your rise over run. So your run is the map distance, but you do it in the units that you measure it in, and it accounts for that. So that's 1 inch. It says right here what the units are. And then the number of contour intervals that you cross. Let's say we cross 15 contour intervals in an inch, and those are contour lines in an inch with an interval of that. And then this one doesn't calculate on the fly, so you have to press the calculate button, and it's an 8% slope. If you wanted it in degrees, there it is. So a very helpful tool indeed. And that's pretty much it for our purposes for the rudimentary operation of Behave Plus. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to contact me with any questions by email, chat, or Canvas conversations. Thank you very much for your time, and look for a new and improved version of this video once I get some screen recording software.